Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link below the episode description.
You know what's fascinating? Research shows that 85% of people focus solely on pursuing happiness. But science suggests we're completely missing a crucial third dimension of living a fulfilling life.
That's such an intriguing way to look at it. What exactly is this third dimension beyond happiness that we're all overlooking?
Well, Dr. Shige Oishi at the University of Chicago discovered something he calls psychological richness. It's this whole other aspect of life that's different from just being happy or finding meaning. And here's what's really interesting. When they studied New York Times obituaries, only about 15% of people were described as having lived truly psychologically rich lives.
That's a surprisingly low number. What exactly makes a life psychologically rich?
So get this. It's not just about having novel experiences. It's about encounters that fundamentally change how you see the world. Like, there was this fascinating study where a student went to a WWE wrestling match expecting it to be, kind of lowbrow entertainment. But they ended up discovering this whole anti-bullying campaign and how these wrestlers were actually role models for kids, completely transformed their perspective.
That's such a perfect example of how our assumptions can be challenged in unexpected ways. But I imagine it's not always comfortable to seek out these perspective-changing experiences.
You're absolutely right. And that's what makes this research so fascinating. The data shows that psychologically rich experiences often aren't even pleasant in the moment. Like, Oishi studied earthquake survivors in Japan and found something really unexpected.
What did they discover about the survivors?
Well, even 16 years after the disaster, those who lost their homes reported lower life satisfaction. And here's the key thing, they showed much higher levels of prosocial behavior and had this profound shift in how they viewed humanity. They witnessed neighbors they barely knew risking their lives to help others. So while it wasn't happy in the traditional sense, it added this incredible layer of richness to their life experience.
That really challenges our typical Western notion of always pursuing positive experiences, doesn't it?
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting about this? When they studied elite athletes and even Nobel Prize winners, they found that the most successful ones weren't the ones who specialized early and stayed in their comfort zones. The ones who achieved the most were actually the ones who played multiple sports or studied various subjects. They embraced that element of playfulness and exploration.
So how can regular people incorporate more of this psychological richness into their lives? It seems like a tall order when most of us are just trying to get through our daily routines.
That's where Oishi's research gets really practical. He suggests starting with small changes, like taking a different route to work or what he calls finding your open friend. You know, that person who's always dragging you to try new things. Even something as simple as reading a book about a completely different culture or time period can add richness to your life.
That reminds me of that amazing quote from the study about the bookstore owner who said he'd lived 4,000 lives through reading 4,000 books.
Yes, and here's another fascinating finding. When they studied college students who experienced negative events, those who were able to find perspective-changing moments in their difficulties reported higher levels of psychological richness, even though they weren't necessarily happier in the traditional sense.
Though I imagine it might be challenging for people who feel really settled in their comfort zones to start seeking out these new experiences.
That's where another interesting piece of Oishi's research comes in. You don't always have to seek out completely new experiences. Sometimes it's about looking at familiar things with fresh eyes. Like how he discovered his wife was an amazing painter after 20 years of marriage just because he asked a different kind of question one day.
So it's not necessarily about making dramatic life changes, but more about cultivating curiosity and openness?
Precisely. And the research shows this approach has real benefits. Studies found that people who regularly engage in perspective-changing experiences show greater resilience, better problem-solving skills, and even stronger interpersonal relationships. It's like building up this psychological immune system that helps you handle life's challenges better.
That's really encouraging. The idea that we can build this capacity for richness over time through small, intentional choices.
And what's particularly fascinating is how this connects to broader societal trends. The research shows that younger generations are actually prioritizing psychological richness more than previous generations did. They're less likely to stay in one job their whole lives or follow traditional life paths.
Though I imagine that shift comes with its own challenges and trade-offs.
Absolutely right. The data shows there's often a tension between stability and richness. But here's what's really interesting. The most fulfilled people in the studies weren't those who went all in on either stability or adventure. They were the ones who found ways to create pockets of richness within their stable lives or built stable foundations that allowed them to safely explore and grow.
It sounds like it's really about finding your own personal balance between these different dimensions of well-being.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from all this research. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to living a good life. Whether you choose stability like Oishi's father or constant change like Oishi himself, what matters is being intentional about creating opportunities for growth and perspective change, even in small ways.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you have received value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show with your friends and send them a link to the show. 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me by sending me a message using the Send Us a Text link below the episode description.